Hey everyone, thanks for being with us. I'm Andrew. I'm really excited to share an update with you about ways of working, really. This is rooted in some evolution in Knapsack's licensing model. We've got some new user types, but really the exciting thing here is the types of workflows we're able to unlock for our customers and really how we're helping design system teams and digital production teams get more people making stuff with the things and the components that they've already created, right? And so we're going to get into that. A couple of shameless plugs here before we do. We like webinars. I don't know if you've noticed that. We have another one coming up here just in a couple of days, all about accessibility. It's going to be a panel discussion moderated by our very own Richard Banfield, who's with us today, with a few amazing panelists to share their perspective on design, strategy, technology, all the things that go into accessibility and why that matters. So check that out this Wednesday. Again, sign up if you can't make it. We'll get you the recording. We also have in-person events. So we do what we call patterns leadership summits. These are summits for really director and above engineering, design, product leaders, just to build some community and commiserate a bit, do a little bit of therapy. Similarly, we often have sort of a panel discussion, maybe one presenter, but it's really focused on teams building connections with each other, building your community, and getting inspiration from others who are tackling the same sorts of things you are. So we've got next event coming up in April in Chicago. Then we'll be in New York City in May, and we're doing these just about every month. So check these out, knapsack.cloud/events. You can find info on these webinars, these events, and our weekly live product demos in case there's more you want to get into than what we see today.
Yeah, and to answer a question real quick, Andrew, already our first question, thank you guys for being interactive. The next one we're going to have in San Francisco likely is going to be sometime in the summer. We don't have that date nailed down yet, but we're trying to do New York and San Francisco at least once a quarter. So we'll see you back there in San Francisco soon.
Right. And if you are in San Francisco for Config or just in general, we're also working on putting together some social events during the week of Config here, just coming up in a month and a half. So be on the lookout for that. I'm sure you will hear from them from our amazing about them from our amazing marketing team. Awesome. So let's get into the topic at hand. As I mentioned, I'm Andrew. I lead strategy at Knapsack. And of the many things that includes, one is, how do we continue to add additional value to the product, to the platform, to our existing customers, and continue to expand the types of solutions that we're able to support. Really excited to dig into, how our consumer role in prototyping is unlocking that. But I'm joined with some other amazing humans. Richard, say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Banfield. I lead design leadership here at Knapsack. And what that really means is I'm the interface between the customer and the product. It gives me an opportunity to talk to a lot of people like you, hear about their problems, a little bit of that therapy that Andrew spoke about, and then use that information to build a better product and ultimately a better experience. So using my knowledge that I've gained from being in this industry for about 2 decades now, and hopefully sharing that in a way that makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, nice to see you all. I recognize a couple of the names here that we have. My name is John Weaver. I'm an account executive here at Knapsack. I lead the sales function. And what that means is I help folks evaluate what we have as a tool and see what the kind of value it is it can bring your organization, right? We talk to a lot of people day in and day out. So if you have questions, concerns, want to just, again, have some therapy. We do a lot of therapy here, Richard. Want to understand kind of what other folks are doing in the industry, drop me a line. Happy to chat through with you what your initiatives are and see if there's a fit.
So in terms of our agenda today, we want to ground all this in, what we're even solving for at Knapsack. And this isn't a new story, right? Everything we're showing you today is a continuation of sort of the core problem that we believe we're addressing within digital production. We'll talk about the new consumer role, and then we'll spend a lot of time in product showing you different use cases for how this functionality is allowing sort of all the different users of a design system, all the different stakeholders in digital product to get more hands-on and make stuff and adopt your system. So in terms of what we're solving for, I don't know if anyone on this call has had this experience, but digital production traditionally has been pretty painful, right? It's not that fun. We've taken this really laborious waterfall process that was pretty much a print design process, and we've just sort of slapped onto the end of it the whole engineering side of things. And then we have all these moments of disconnect, right? We get stakeholders usually buying into probably a PDF, maybe a Figma prototype, right? They're seeing something in design, expectations are anchored there. And then we spend a whole lot of time actually making the thing in the real medium of destination code, working with content, getting everything working as expected. And then we get into the QA part where we realize there's a gap between all the things that we built for real and all the things we plan to build based on the design phase. And then we spend all of our life in revisions. And the pain here is not just that it takes a long time to get through this, is you have these surprises that come late in the game, right? We've all been part of projects or budgets that, timelines get blown when you think you're right there. You think you're at the 5-yard line, and suddenly there's surprises and we got to go back and rework and et cetera. Right? Richard, you've been doing this for a long time. You ever been through anything like this?
Oh man, these gray hairs is because of this thing. Too many handoffs, too many conversations, too many reworks. And, it would be great if this wasn't linear. It would be great if there was a better way to do it. We think there is. We think there could be. And we're certainly working with our customers to find ways to understand how they work, but also help them see ways that maybe they don't immediately see themselves because of the way that they've always worked, and use that as a indication of what could be done. So we're sometimes even recommending or having an opinion about something, and that's what we're going to be talking about today.
And so, it maybe doesn't always look like this to everyone. We've certainly come a little ways in the last 30 years. Design systems were supposed to be a big part of the solution over the past, I don't know, it's called 5 to 10 years. We took these concepts from engineering of reuse and, variables and all these things that we knew could make a scalable production process, and we tried to fit them around all of design and engineering. It didn't really work out quite as planned, right? Most teams we talk to, still, things feel pretty similar to how they felt maybe 10 years ago, right? It's a little bit faster to make the comps. Maybe we build things a little faster, but those human expectation gaps, the painful QA process and surprises and revision work, that really hasn't changed that much. And part of that, in our mind, is some part due to tooling, right? There's still a big disconnect and, divisions between design tooling versus engineering tooling. And so even in the world of a system where we say, let's say we have one component library that should solve for a lot of our needs, how design uses the component library, how engineering uses the component library, they're working with different things. And so we still have this opportunity for disconnects. We feel like we have one central reusable set of things. We kind of use different tools and interact with them separately. And so it hasn't really changed that much. And this has been what we've been out to solve all along in Knapsack, even way before we get to prototyping and making things with components. The ability to surface everything in one place, empty everyone's pockets onto the same table, design, code, all the different implementations, put a circle around it, put some statuses on it, understand if your properties are aligned across how you've built this thing. That's where we've started, right? Is to bring clarity to teams around what the heck do we have and what can we do with what we have, so you can all make better decisions about where we spend our time, right? You have this ability to capture and share reusable design and code, which even outside the system team means your product teams can share innovations. When someone hits the limits of the system and they make something new in design or code, somebody else can see that and benefit from that, right? And of course, a lot of the promises of systems that are like centralized testing or taking these things happening at the last mile of product and elevating them to a central resource, that's really hard to do if tooling's all over the place. And so this idea of being the system of record for all the design and code that you're going to be able to reuse, that's where we've been playing. And that really ladders into this next concept, which is how do we go from capturing, cataloging, creating visibility around reusable design and code to actually letting people make stuff with it, right? Not just documentation, but shippable end user experiences. And what we're seeing, this trend is not just something at Knapsack, where we're seeing the ability to allow people to do more, lower the barrier to adoption, to creation, to access, right? You can't open a Twitter, X, LinkedIn, you can't open anything these days without seeing somebody talking about how I don't know how to do anything and I just made a piece of software, right? And so there's this clear trend emerging where anybody can make things. And what we see for our customers, for large enterprises, that's really intrinsically tied to the design system and what we're trying to enable, right? We don't want to make anything out of nothing. We have building blocks that we think are important, that are compliant, that are accessible. We're starting to hit this new future, Richard, where we can actually allow people that aren't Figma users, aren't VS Code users, to make stuff and make it with a real system. This is pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andrew and I both worked at InVision, and we both saw the promise of being able to create something that's shareable and usable and obviously has a rich visual language in it. The thing that design systems haven't been able to do until now is that they've been able to create the Lego blocks, but they haven't given you a place in, to go and create them easily. You had to go back to the canvas in order to do the creative work. What we're doing now is saying, don't go back to the well, don't go back to the canvas. Move forward. Bring your design components into an environment in which you can see what a landing page looks like, what a product page looks like, what this combination of components will look like. And know when you're doing that, that they can see the actual product living and breathing in the code that it'll ultimately be in when it gets to the customer. That creative role that you're talking about here now is called, the vibe coder or the vibe designer. It might seem like a joke right now, but it's quickly becoming like the standard of, I've got a bunch of stuff and I'm going to make a thing, and I don't need to have all of the technical skills. I just need to understand what the outcome and the components are in order for me to get there.
That's right. And so what does this look like in a workflow? Well, this is what our consumer role is all about, first and foremost, right? If you've used Knapsack, we have sort of editor and contributor and admin roles. We have viewers. If you don't know Knapsack, we traditionally have had the ability to kind of be the whole maker, creator, manager of your workspace, your Knapsack instance, or just a viewer who could see it. We've now got this new role that maps to this creator persona we're seeing in the market, right? This ability to have, as I said earlier, not a Figma user, not a VS Code user, and they intentionally are working within limitations, is what we'll get into here. They're working within, what can I do with components, with themes, with the web browser? It's not a free-for-all. It's not an infinite canvas, and that's kind of the point, right? And when we have that ability to work within constraints, even before we get to just how much AI loves the idea of clear constraints, from a human standpoint, this ability to say, let me first jump right into making things with the coded components that I have that are going to show up to my users. I've got components, I've got themes, I've got environments like browsers, mobile apps. I can assemble those pieces hands-on, see how far I can get with what I have. The whole purpose of a system, right, is to allow us to reuse things for a bunch of workflows and situations where we believe we have a good reusable solution. I'm going to work within those, and then I'm going to understand exactly what I actually need to make or modify, this gap analysis, right? And so what we do is we not only de-scope the design to code production workflow, we also cut out a lot of the parts that are inherently problematic, right? We all hear stories of someone broke a component in Figma, and whether it was purposeful or not, the ripple effect, if it's not so perfectly communicated across functions, is terrible, right? A stakeholder thought it would be X, the engineering team saying, why are we remaking a thing, right? But this all kind of fades away if we use this ability to make stuff with our system first, and then go into design saying, I'm only focusing on what we're going to make or modify. I don't need to make whole pages every time. I don't need to make something that's 90% made with system components in Figma. I can just go make it with the components in code that the Figma components are supposed to represent. Right? So there's certainly change management, behavior change that comes with this, and we all know that's typically the hardest part of any shift like this. But the opportunity is really massive, and my slide doesn't have enough room for font to be legible and really represent the opportunity here. I mean, we're talking about orders of magnitude of time savings over what we see most teams getting out of their design system today.
I have to share an anecdote that I heard today. A front-end dev said to me, I've already got all the components that I need, and I've got a pretty good idea of what the solution needs to be because I've been working on this product for a very long time. I don't want to go back to UX, to design, to start from scratch. I think by this afternoon, I could have a living, breathing prototype that I could share with everybody. And it's that moment when you change the culture, when somebody sees that efficiency and that effectiveness of the efficiency relayed through the creation of something. And that's what we're looking for here. That will only need to happen a couple of times in an organization before somebody says, that was quick. I really like what you did there. We've got now we've got more time to get into the backlog and do the other stuff.
That's right. That's right. And so we're already starting to see some examples of how teams are using this. I want to dive into those now, and then we'll make sure we have time for questions, make sure you know how to get hands on this stuff. But what Richard just said is, is true, but it's not also just about efficiency, right? Some of the exciting things I'm hearing are that idea of cutting out the painful, chaotic work, or a lot of it. We hear about product managers using this functionality to understand what we can do with what we have before we write the PRD, right? To inform what it is we're actually going to work on. And so let me get into the right demo space. Here we go. So this is what I want to go into. I want to go through a few different use cases of what we're seeing, how this is being used, not just by design and engineering, not just by product, by marketers, by copywriters, by data analysts that want to make sure that tracking code's implemented properly. So much opportunity here. So first and foremost, I am logged into Knapsack, and I am what they call a consumer. A consumer is, as I mentioned on our sort of table, if you look at our help docs, below an admin and contributor, who are the folks that are typically maintaining this documentation site. Right? If you haven't seen Knapsack before, they're doing things like connecting, coded components, React web components. We've got Figma integrations, so they're pulling in Figma assets. They're building things like these documentation pages. This one shows comparison of design and code, or they're saving the default examples of our code combinations where we've got a card with a button. Right? And so this is all essentially building docs. And then we've had folks who can manage it and folks who can view it. We're now opening up this new capability called consumer, which, as you see, I have the documentation section. I can navigate everything here, but I also have this prototype section. And essentially, the consumer role is a viewer who can make prototypes. And prototyping is some of our latest functionality we rolled out late in 2024. And that's where we're really gonna dig into here. So the concept, again, if you're not as familiar with Knapsack, is all these coded components in particular that have been connected. We've got a card, we've got author, we got button, we have all these options. I can actually start to make things with them in real code without knowing how to code. Trust me, I'm a philosophy degree sales guy. I do not know how to code. So let's get into it. I'm going to go to prototyping, and I'm going to go into an edit branch. This is going to allow me to create things I can save and share. And so I'm going to hit edit here. And this will pop open our editing environment. You'll see I now have a nice add new button. I have a folder here with a page template that I'll come back to in a little bit, because I want to show sort of our approach to the canvas starting from scratch. So I'm going to go start from scratch. I'm going to add a new prototype. You'll see I have all the different code frameworks that we support in this instance, and there's more than these 3 available, we can work with. So I've got in this a demo environment, React components, web components, handlebar components. I'll do React. I'm going to start from blank, but I can also choose a pre-existing template if I want. And I'm going to do a card grid exploration. This is building on something we see as already one of the most common use cases in Knapsack, which is individuals that are looking to, during the design process, during the UX process, validate kind of their understanding, right? Look at things like responsive breakpoints and really know how something's going to function, not just based on how it's set up in a spec doc or in Figma, but the real components. And so in my card grid, I'm going to start with I've got a grid component. This is going to handle a lot of the responsiveness. And I can go in here and you see there's some pre-built examples. I can swap these out. And I can use anything in my system if I want. I've got a animated area chart that I could add to this if I want. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to go back to a card, replace that with card. I've got pre-built examples, and then I have the ability to modify these as well. And so, if I was working on this and I wanted to build something like a travel planning site, I'll just go into one of my cards and show you how that might look. Right? I can use these real components. Let's drop some content in here. Got this. We've got maybe upload an image. This one, let's do that. Beautiful. And I go to my button. I can make my button say, plan a trip. The point of where I'm going with this, I can make my own experience within what I can do with these components. So in this case, the props of the components, the slots, which is how we can pass in, sub content. And this is all using the production components that are going to be used if I were to send this to my team and they were going to ship something, right? And I can actually go look at that code. See, I've done nothing bespoke here. I can't break a component, can't add new props. You see, here's how I would implement this. I'm using the grid, the card, and the button. Even if you don't know code, you can kind of squint at this and see, oh, a card with that title, that description. This is how systems work, how coded components work, right? It's a templating language that lets us populate data, content into these different properties or options and get an expected output. And so now I have this, I can even get a little more custom if I want. Like let's go into this into my action card. What if I wanted to add a second button? Now it probably shouldn't be 2 primary buttons, so it'd probably be outlined. See, this looks a little silly because they're right next to each other. This is where we know how web browsers work. This is a system built for the web in this case. So I can actually go in and say, hey, put them horizontal, and let's give them a spacing token, a medium spacing token, 16 pixels. Maybe I can play with that and make it vertical if I want. I can go back and let's again look at the code. If you're technical, you'll recognize this is really simple. We wrapped something in a div and applied some styling. So again, we're working within the real structure of the end user experience. In this case, a web browser, the components with properties and slots, and we have themes. We have actually that medium spacing token can change its value based on cozy or compact. I've got different brands that I've set up. And so all of this I can start to make within the confines of my system. I can actually go, let's just, for the sake of the demo to make this all look better, let's go real quick, update our cards, our images too. So they all look like a travel site. I'll spare you all the content piece, but we can go through here. There's another travel site. It's a great image. So this one, all right. And so now that I've started specking out my new feature area, I can also share this, right? I can put this into a Jira ticket. I can share this with engineering. They can check out the code. I can share it with a stakeholder. I can put it through contrast checker. I can experiment with responsive touchpoints, right? All of the things that are a gap typically between sort of how a lot of teams that aren't engineers interact with something and the real end user experience. Now everybody's hands-on, right? Everybody's making things with your system. And so right now I'm talking about probably a use case that exists in production of looking at a wireframe or planning your design and getting really meticulous. But hopefully you can start to see how this expands into things like copywriting, right? I want to be specific about where the line breaks are based on the real implementation, not based on how someone adjusted a text field or a font size in a Figma file, right? I want to look at how analytics is implemented. I want to be able to open all this stuff up in dev tools and comb through the code and understand how, whether or not the Adobe Analytics tags are firing properly, right? All of these things that are critical to production that often show up in QA because no one could do something with the real end user, the code, now start to become possible just through this prototyping UI.
And you also have a really good place to start a conversation. If you do need to go back to a designer or UX, you can say, hey, I noticed that when we create these things from the components that we have, these are the outcomes that are only half achieving the goal. For example, if I look at this, I might say, well, we're a little light on this particular border size, or we are having a conflict between these two colors. How can we then resolve that? So this is a much simpler way to start a conversation and have a specific path forward in terms of workflow instead of saying, hey, we need a landing page. Like that sounds like in some organizations could be months of work. Whereas now you might say, hey, are there ways for us to tweak this? And that's a much shorter conversation.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, that idea of emptying everyone's pockets onto the same table is still key here, right? We can all actually have an aligned conversation because we know what each other are looking at. And really, in this case, everyone can come downstream to the engineering world without having to know anything about Git or code.
Right. We often say, I write, as you know, and one of the things we say is it's much easier to edit than it is to write. Mm-hmm. The blank page is sometimes intimidating and confusing, whereas looking at something and being able to say, hey, this is not quite what it needs to be. Is there a way for you to assist me to get there?
Yeah. So let's go a little bit bigger picture. Right now, we're looking at a section of a page, maybe, right? A grid with some cards. What if I, want to go up a little bit higher? And so I want to talk about a use case where this is more about maybe user testing, A/B testing, exploration. And so in this case, I am on a site. We have a demo site for retail. So showing the example of probably the most important page on an e-commerce site next to checkout, and the one with the pay button, which is the PDP, the product detail page, right? And so in this hypothetical scenario, we've got an e-com site, and we've rolled out a new component for things like shipping, but we actually have some options on how we use it. And so I'm going to go into this section here, and I want to do some different testing. So first, I'm going to just open up that existing one that I have. And now let's go into the details here. And I want to go into the pant. And here I have my color, my size, my details, my button. I'm going to go in and add a new component that we just released, the select shipping component. And you see by default, it's going to drop it in the bottom. That's probably not where I want it, but I don't want to make presumptions because I am a data-driven individual. And so I am going to open that up in a new window. And then I also am going to put it where I think probably makes a little more sense, which is before the CTA button. But again, I'm no expert. And maybe I'll open that up. We even have this in different themes. This is hypothetical here. I got brand A and brand B, but I can swap out some colors, different logo. And so all of these, just by having components connected to Knapsack and somebody with the ability to access this in our consumer role, I can make all these variants, simple variants here, and then test these out. And again, know with confidence this is 99.9% what would ship if we decided to use these. And I don't need to ask an engineer for anything. I don't need to ask a designer for anything in this case, right? Just the fact that I have the reusable code, it's connected to Knapsack, and I've got this experience opens up these possibilities. And again, all of these, this isn't just your Figma comp. This isn't just using auto layout. This is what's going to be on your website, on your e-com site, powering your revenue. And, just to take it to another side of things, I think email to me is an underserved market in design systems. It's some of the most templatized, simplest HTML, CSS, and yet very few teams we talk to actually have rounded that corner. That's why we support Handlebars. It's a simple templating language, kind of like React Web Components, but really great for things like email. And so here we have some customers that are starting to use this to say, make it here, right? There's a lot of ways we can go from this code. This is what Handlebars looks like, totally. But from this code or from the HTML, CSS of this to production. But this email living in kind of a whole separate domain and its own class of infrastructure disconnected from your design and brand and product system doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so, that's something we start to support, but also this is showing how a lot of teams will build custom templates for this prototyping experience. So you notice the first thing here is this, it's called standard base layout, and it has custom, what we call slots, which are the areas that are designated to have certain components. And so I see a lot of use cases like this. Email is certainly one. We see cases where teams have something like their website header and footer and side nav built into a template so you can't remove them. And so you're working within the page body area, all kinds of different use cases for, what you might want to enable people to build. But, that very first screen I opened where I said, hey, I've got page templates in my prototyping area. That's something that, a lot of teams are starting to build out. It's a component, just like your design system components, but it's something that you implement specifically to unlock different scenarios and workflows within Knapsack. All right, so email is one of them. The other one that I'll just touch on here before we shift over to Q&A is, landing page. And so, when we talk about that idea of cutting out some of the work that tends to be some of the most problematic. We work with some really large healthcare companies, pharma companies. There's a lot of website creation in sort of the marketing world. And often, honestly, there's 4 or 5 months of design work to make a 15-page brochure website that is probably 80 to 90% covered by the system, which is a lot of time and money. And then every decision that comes out of that you make something that isn't using a component that it could have. We all lived through this for decades, right? Now, think of the difference between spending 6+ months in UX and design to make this cookie cutter-ish website or landing page, and now saying, oh, okay, well, we just implemented a new brand. I made a Knapsack brand earlier before we started with our logo and our color, great. And now I want to, I think I could even go in and I could swap out some of the content here. Do that thing. Get a little Knapsack content in there. Awesome. Right. I can go do the same thing I did earlier with the card grid. I can start to customize what these CTAs are. And so now the difference between, hey, we plodded along for months and months and months to get to design, to get ready for dev, we can now go the exact opposite direction and say, hey, marketing brand content owner, here's what your homepage could be, and we could ship it today. Let's work backwards from here and figure out what really we should spend more time on. Right? Because most teams I talk to both say we don't need all the special snowflakes, and also in any individual situation can argue why that thing should be designed differently, built differently, right? And so the ability, as Richard said, to kind of come with something tangible to all look at and say, we know we could ship this. Now, where do we want to spend our high effort time? Hopefully on high value activities. That is so powerful. It's a complete flip of most of the creative process. But it really is letting teams finally embrace the power of systems, which is, again, we've set up reusable assets and parameters that we believe if we work within, we can go really far, really fast for a lot of situations we run into all the time. Now we finally have tools that match up to that, right? Work within those constraints. Don't just use them as suggestions. So lots more use cases we can get into here, but I'm going to step down off the soapbox for a minute and turn it over to look at some of the Q&A. John, any good questions coming into the chat so far?
Yeah, I think something we can touch on a little bit is just like roles and permissioning. Who has access to this? I know you mentioned the consumer role, but who can see these? Who can create these? Who can delete these? So on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have, as I mentioned, the contributor admin roles that are sort of the ones who create a lot of own the workspace overall. And the consumer role is enabled to come in and make new prototypes. That's the making that they do. So they can't edit documentation, but they can go into the screen I showed you and create a new prototype, create folders for those. And then they won't have the ability to publish those. Publish meaning they go all the way live for everybody else to see on this in the prototype section, everyone who has access. But they are able to tee those up for review. So I won't go into all the details here, but we do have some approval workflows and features that we can support. But again, the core workflow we're seeing is typically an admin contributor will create some of those templates, including sometimes a blank one. And then the consumers are the ones who are going in and saying, hey, I'm either going to work in that blank canvas, or I'm going to use that pre-built, marketing landing page template and add my content. I will say also there's a lot of refinement and improvement and iteration coming. Even we just rolled out the folders last week. We've got some other changes coming, and this is where we want to hear from you. First priority is get people hands-on with this to be able to use it to make things, but we're continuing to sort of mature and grow those different cross-functional workflows, cross-role workflows, because we're seeing teams lean in already, right? And focus on even shifting some of the work that's happening in Figma, happening in these infinite canvases to Knapsack. So lots of workflows we support today, and also lots more you'll see throughout this year.
I think the general trend is that we're seeing our design peers, partners want to spend more time focused on the problem solving and not as much time just pushing pixels around, right? So there's a natural evolution here. I mean, Andrew, you and I have been around here for a long time. When we first started with the first canvases with like Corel Draw and things like that, and we've evolved through these different sets of tools. We're just seeing a natural evolution. This is not, to say that Figma isn't a better tool for one thing and not another. It's just a natural evolution. We're looking for ways to work better. We're looking for ways to work on the things that are more creative, problem-solving oriented, as opposed to doing the grunt work. Now, what's precipitating this as well is that we have this general macro story about AI. AI is saying, well, what else can be made more efficient? What else can be made, how else can we give people the power of creation without having to have them learn 7 years of coding or 7 years of design? How can we give them those tools immediately? So it's just a natural evolution. And our evolution within Knapsack has been orientated towards that. We're asking the question, if you're going to make all of these components, if you're going to spend the time constructing all the different blocks of Lego, then you also need a place to go and build. You need a place to go and assemble. And you want to be able to do this with the people that matter, whether that's a PM or a BA or a marketing person. All of those opinions count, whether you use a RACI model or something like that. Those consultative or assigned people within that process need to see what it is that you're working on. So this is just a natural evolution, and just makes sense that a company like ours with a tool like ours would come up with something like this.
Yeah, and it's embracing just the age-old concern that design systems will kill creativity or limit creativity. No, we're trying to go as far as fast as we can with the system, so you can get to the point where creativity can be unleashed, right? To focus that creativity, because I think that we don't want to focus all our creative effort on things where being creative wasn't in the best interest of the business. Everyone on this call is working on moving a business forward, not design for design's sake. So this is our attempt to allow you to figure out, how do we scope the important work and get after it?
Something that I've heard from customers is that they feel like they're cheating, right? They're using these tools to be faster or to be more efficient. And they say, gee, I feel like I'm cheating on my craft. I'm cheating on the process. And really that is the answer, is that yes, it's not cheating, it's more like, shortcutting or efficiencies, but you are actually using less of your time to do the grunt work, to do the mundane administrative style work, and spending a little bit more time on the things that matter. And that's, again, a good thing. You should feel excited by that. And if you've used AI and you've seen how quickly it can help you, maybe it's, organize your taxes, or help you write a blog post, or, plan a trip, whatever it is that you've done, you've immediately seen, wow, this is better. And I'm actually happier because I don't have to spend so much time doing the grunt work. So the folks that have adopted these kinds of techniques, where they're prototyping out of these components, when I talk to them, they're just lighter and happier because they're starting to find more time to do the things that they want to do, instead of, gee, I got to go and administrate this thing, or I've got to go and manage this thing. I actually don't want to do those things. I want to be doing the creative work. So yeah, a kind of a lightness and a levity is coming along with this thing. So actually, we're not selling a design system platform here. We're selling happiness.
We come back to therapy yet again.
It always comes
Awesome.
back.
Always back to therapy. Well, as part of that question, or another question, based on what you just said there, Richard, is, one of the things here is like, well, the question is like, what do you do if there's not a component here that you need, right? And I think that's part of finding, the delta, finding what's missing, right? Andrew, like, well, what do teams do if like they're trying to create a new experience and they need something that's not there, covered by the design system?
Congratulations, you figured out the thing to talk about as a team.
Right.
Right. That's, and to bring the thing that, like today, I'm in full disclosure, you probably have a slightly wonky looking experience in your prototype. You're like, I don't have a thing I need for this. Or maybe you use something else to put it there and you point, and you say, that's not right. That's fine. You're looking at something, it's tangible, it's based in reality, right? And so the conversation that happens in the scenario you're talking about, regardless of the exact workflow and mechanism and who shared, that is the conversation we are trying to enable exactly. And I'm also excited on the product side for us to work more and more on that, right? A lot of the work so far has been, how do we let you make things with what you have? Turning that into like focusing on the scoping piece of, okay, based on what you made and what you couldn't, how do we gracefully support the placeholder component? I'd love to get to the point where that gap analysis is productized on our side, where you actually go in and make a thing and it spits out, I don't know, some Jira tickets, right? Or some way to scope that work. Because again, the faster we get to what the heck do we actually need to work on, the faster these great projects are going to go out the door, the less pain we're all going to feel in handoff and QA. And most importantly, the more y'all get to work on your backlog, or the thing that's going to 10x your product that you didn't have time for last quarter, right? That's the point. You could go lay people off if you want, but we're always asking, where would you spend that extra 30, 40, 50%? Hopefully it's on just crushing it.
Yeah, shipping more stuff.
Last question, John, what do we do if we've stoked the fires and they just can't go another minute without trying this stuff?
Yeah, we'd love to talk with you more. Likely there's going to be a situation, that you all have that we didn't cover today, and that's okay, right? That's part of having multiple companies and industries on a call together. If you are a current Knapsack user, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about, what are the costs associated with viewer user or consumer users. We'll give you a quick highlight into that, is they don't cost as much as contributor users, which is great. Or if you want to find out, if you're not a Knapsack user and you want to find out more about Knapsack as a total package, and not just the consuming portion here or the prototyping portion, reach out to us, sales@knapsack.cloud. That's a shared inbox that we'll make sure we get information back out to you quickly, or response to you quickly. Of course, you can connect with me directly. Thank you, Kim. John@knapsack.cloud. Very original email addresses we have here, but should be pretty easy to remember. Always happy to talk through with you on what this looks like, how teams use it more, how you might use it more, or certain challenges that you're trying to solve for. I mean, that's where it gets fun, right? Is like specific scenarios. Like, for instance, we have a couple of customers that are what's it called, Andrew? You know the term MLR. For like
medical, legal, regulatory review. Oh, we love don't we love compliance, everyone?
So whatever specific scenario, you guys have, just let us know and we're happy to dig into it with you.
And if you're just looking to learn more about Knapsack in general, again, knapsack.cloud, we host a live demo every Thursday afternoon where you can just get the overview of the product as a whole. There's a lot we didn't get into today around theming, around tokens, around just the value of sort of a Knapsack workspace. But we're here to help teams modernize how they produce digital products cross-functionally, take advantage of the opportunity that the digital medium represents in general, and ultimately just be happier, shipping better products faster.
That's right.
So
Happy
that
more
sounds
therapy.
good. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for spending your time with
joining
us. Appreciate it. Valuable on a Monday. Hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you soon.